This presentation will cover the beginnings of the United States of America, the composition of her people, the framework of her government, her political economic system, her advanced democracy, the economic state of the Union, and the U.S. as a constitutional democracy. The United States of America had a rebel-rousing and revolutionary beginning, but since that time she has grown to become a large land covering over 3 million square miles and containing a population of over 313 million individuals. These 313 million individuals come from a plethora of different ethnic and social backgrounds, making the composition of America quite diverse. But today, America is changing and becoming even more diverse than ever before. In fact, according to the 2010 census, at that time, 72% of the population classified themselves as white, 13% as Black or African American, 5% as Asian, and 0.9% as American Indian or Alaska Native. Additionally, 0.2% classified themselves as Native, Hawaiian, or Pacific Islander, while 6% stated that they were some other race from those mentioned, and 3% declared that they were descended from several different races. Thus, it can be easily seen that the United States is the melting pot of the world. The United States obtains its legitimacy through rational legal means. This involves obtaining legitimacy through legal avenues. As such, the United States is a constitutional democracy, which, according to the book Government by the People, is a government that enforces recognized limits on those who govern and allows the voice of the people to be heard through free, fair, and relatively frequent elections. Also, the United States is a federal state, which implies that power is not centrally held as in places like Great Britain. Instead, power is spread among the 50 states. As shown on the screen, the United States contains 3 primary political institutions, otherwise known as branches. These institutions are the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. In the most basic sense, the legislative branch is responsible for making laws and policies. The executive branch is responsible for executing the various laws and policies made by the legislative branch, and then the judicial branch is responsible for ensuring that those laws and policies are constitutionally accurate. The United States is a constitutional democracy, and with this system of government comes the need for a process by which to elect officials. Voting. However, as seen with the massive demographic differences of this melting pot we call the United States, the will of the people is shifting as more individuals from various parts of the world come to call the USA their home. Thus, great societal advancements have been and will be made with regard to these elected officials. For example, as the years pass, more African Americans and Hispanics are being elected to public office. In fact, our current president, President Barack Obama, is African American. Further, some prominent Hispanic and African American candidates have been elected to public office in the last few years. Most notably, most obviously, and just mentioned, President Barack Obama was elected in 2008 and then again in 2012. Also, Marco Rubio, of Cuban descent, was elected senator in the great state of Florida in 2010. Ted Cruz, also of Cuban descent, was elected a United States senator in 2010 as well. And Sonia Sotomayor, of Hispanic descent, was appointed to the Supreme Court in 2009. America's ethnic and social composition is indeed changing rapidly. According to the text, Essentials of Comparative Politics, a political economic system is the actual relationship between political and economic institutions in a particular country, as well as the policies and the outcomes they create. The United States claims to have a liberal political economic system. Nations with a liberal political economic system are defined by their low monetary expenditures, their light regulation, and little taxation. The political economic system of liberalism emphasizes freedom. This system believes in small government and preaches a laissez-faire state. Liberalism believes in low taxation and little regulation. Social democracy, on the other hand, takes a little after liberalism, but also a little bit after communism. Social democracy believes that the unequal distribution of wealth can do more harm than good and can thereby polarize the state. Social democracy differs from liberalism specifically in its belief in bigger government. In social democracy, the government is seen more as a provider to the people. This is seen specifically in the matter of the redistribution of wealth, which alleviates the polarization that unequal wealth can induce, as well as providing for the needs of the people. Though the United States claims that it has a liberal political economic system, it is ever shifting towards a more social democratic political economic system with its focus on big government and redistribution of resources. In fact, the United States has been on a roller coaster in its level of economic liberalization since 1980. On a scale from 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest economic liberalization and 1 being the lowest economic liberalization, the U.S. has gone from a 7.7 in 1980 to an 8.0 in 2005 and then back down to a 7.8 in 2009. Though from a cursory glance this may not seem that significant, it really is. Instead of increasing in economic liberalization, we are declining, slowly but surely. In the past few years, the United States has actually increased its social expenditures dramatically. In the 2014 fiscal year, the federal government plans to spend upwards of $1.2 trillion on government pensions, upwards of $1.3 trillion on government health care, and then upwards of $0.5 trillion on government welfare, among other expenditures, of course. This is significant because from the year 1980, government pensions only cost $143 billion, government health care only cost $87 billion, and then government welfare only cost $95 billion. Although one has to account for the decreasing value of the dollar, the change from billion with a B to trillion with a T is dramatic. It is undeniable that government spending, and even government itself, has gotten significantly bigger in the last few years. The United States is shifting towards a more social democratic political economic system with a focus on big government spending. Further, the United States of America can most certainly be classified as an advanced democracy. Actually, according to the text, advanced democracies share a basic set of institutions through which they reconcile freedom and equality. And these institutions include liberal democracy, with its emphasis on participation, competition, and liberty, and capitalism, with its emphasis on free markets and private property. Each of these characteristics can be ascertained in the United States of America, making her a truly advanced democracy. However, with this idea of advanced democracies come a slew of problems, and the U.S. is not exempt from these issues. For instance, devolution is a unique problem for advanced democracies. In fact, according to the text, devolution is a process by which powers and resources are transferred away from central state institutions and vested at a lower level. This is actually an interesting problem because the formation of the state relied primarily on centralization. However, as time goes on, the citizens of these advanced democracies become increasingly fearful that the government has gotten too big and way too controlling of their daily lives. This is especially true in the United States of America as well. Another unique problem that advanced democracies face is the issue of integration. Integration, according to the text, is a process by which states pool their sovereignty, surrendering some individual power in order to gain political, economic, or societal benefits in return. The United States faces some of this issue with regard to the balance of power between the state governments and the national government. For example, the Affordable Care Act implemented integration by making a federal mandate that required all citizens to purchase health care in every state. However, some states executed devolution by implementing their own versions of health care for their citizens. These states went so far as to create their own healthcare websites, coordinate with the health insurance companies to provide services for their citizens, and even advertise their services to the people. The most striking evidence that these actions exercised devolution is that these states even received federal funds to implement these actions. Constitutional democracy, the kind we have in the United States, is extremely hard to achieve, equally hard to sustain, and often hard to understand, according to Government by the People. Democracy, as defined by the text, Essentials of Comparative Politics, incorporates such freedoms as the freedom of speech, voting rights, and free elections. Democracy, when dissected into its root words of demos and kratia, basically means people rule. Basically, then, democracy, as defined by its roots, means government by the people. According to Schmitter and Carl's essay, What Democracy Is and Is Not, modern democracy, in other words, offers a variety of competitive processes and channels for the expression of interest and values, associational as well as partisan, functional as well as territorial, collective as well as individual. All are integral to its practice. One could certainly say that the government of the United States of America fits easily into these parameters of democracy. Other hallmarks of democracy include citizenship, competition, elections, and compromise. This presentation has covered the beginnings of the United States and the composition of her people, the framework of the American government and her political economic system, also her advanced democracy and the economic state of the Union, and finally the United States as a constitutional democracy.